What's going on, guys? We're here today, and a unique opportunity has presented itself in that I'm here with Jordan Shallow, who is a recent addition to the Universal team. And for those of you who don't know, Jordan is by trade a chiropractor and physical therapist. Correct?
Chiropractor,
yeah. He actually, you have a space right in Dan Green's
Yes,
gym.
yeah, my office is inside Boss Barbell.
And work with a lot of, obviously, Dan.
Yeah, Dan, powerlifters, strength sport athletes, CrossFitters, Olympic lifters, but yeah, pretty much anyone under a barbell.
And a good friend of mine, Chris Tuttle, who's also a Universal athlete, recently enlisted Jordan's services, and I know has made some incredible progress in his training. You know, in his own words, his training is better than it's been in years, and he himself had a knee injury. Nothing super acute, but something that was really causing him a lot of pain and holding him back. And I know with your help, he's made a lot of progress recently. So being here today, you know, Jordan and I got talking. It's been almost exactly a year since I've had my surgery for a quad tendon rupture. And although I've made, you know, some decent progress, of course, I'd like to make more, lots more, quickly. And just talking with Jordan earlier, we just kind of were talking about some stuff, and I think Jordan may be able to help me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the underlying issues that you're going to see, whether it's Chris, or whether it's Dan, or whether it's Evan, is going to be just underlying instabilities. Because, like, in strength sports and bodybuilding and powerlifting, everyone, the only stimulus we look at is resistance, right? Like, get stronger to get bigger, or get stronger to get stronger, whatever objective outcome of our sport.
How much you bench?
Exactly, right? But that was a serious question. That put me on the spot. But yeah, that's like, no one goes, how much can you single leg RDL?
Right.
Because the answer isn't objective, it's subjective, right? So when we're looking to fix kind of underlying instabilities, we can't progress the stimulus of resistance, right? That's going to make us stronger. So there's a difference between anatomically loading a muscle correctly and neurologically loading a muscle correctly. So we were discussing earlier about, you know, you'd kind of found unilateral movements or single leg movements that have helped with the knee. But even the unilateral movements, you were still externalizing some of that stimulus of instability. We were doing them on machines, right? And that's what I'll get a lot from bodybuilders. Like, oh, do you do any single leg stuff? Yeah, single leg extensions, hamstring curls. Yeah, leg press, right? So it's part of the way there, because you're not totally reliant on your structure, especially with like the more axial loaded stuff, like the V squat or like the leg press. But if you were trying to manage more than your own body weight, but you can't stabilize at the base minimum your own body weight, you're setting yourself up sort of down the road for some of these injuries, because it's not an overuse, it's a misuse injury. Something like Chris is more like a tendonitis issue, where it's like the fact that he might think he's overusing it is probably a little misguided. It's the instability of the two bones that are going to comprise the actual joint itself. That instability kind of in a rotational plane, while that joint is supposed to go through a hinging plane, that's going to cause kind of a torque in a wrong joint. The hips are meant to manage torque, shoulders are meant to manage torque because they're rotational joints, right? But anytime, so you mentioned you were having some trouble squatting, getting back into that position and even just getting under the bar, it's that if that shoulder doesn't allow for that rotational, external rotation, abduction, extension, you're going to try and get it here. So you're going to end up with elbow injuries, just as maybe the hip could have been an underlying cause of the knee.
Well, I think it might have been, as I mentioned to you, for about 2 months prior to the injury occurring, I was having all sorts of tightness in my hip and just a dull aching pain that wouldn't go away. Yeah. So, you know, in hindsight, I wish I had, you know, paid greater attention.
Yeah, and the tightness thing is something you're going to get a lot. Tightness or pain, or like the foam rolling, and that'll be really like painful, but it'll offer some sort of like palliative relief, transient relief. Where it's, think of stimulus adaptation. Like if we were to go for a run right now, if I went for a run, I'd be sore for weeks. But like, you know, we train our quads, we train our hamstrings, we train our glutes, but we just train them with a different stimulus. We train them to, you know, to have some sort of metabolic conditioning if the goal is hypertrophy, or you train them to be strong. But think of like the muscles of the hip, or even the muscles of the rotator cuff. They work in a plane that's not really beholden to gravity, so their need to overcome resistance and be strong is a lot less. Right? So, but the stimulus that they need is the stimulus progression of instability, right? So it's the difference between strength is exerting force, where stability is resisting force. So The plate flapping stuff, that's all good for activation of like the rotator cuff, but it's not really how that muscle is going to integrate. When you're bench pressing, when are you doing this, right? So it's the idea of like neurologically loading that muscle correctly. So the big thing with the hip is that dynamic correspondence of having the foot on the floor. If, you know, we're doing like these monster walk, band resisted, side lying, Jane Fonda glute exercises, that's adding resistance to something that needs to be stable. The best way to do that from like a dynamic correspondence, so coming from a powerlifting background, is how is this accessory movement going to transfer over to my lifts to make me stronger?
Right.
So if I'm squatting and deadlifting or even bench pressing, I want my feet on the floor, because if at any point I'm squatting and this is happening, I'm having a bad day on the platform, right? So going through, like we had talked about, gait cycle movements, so like functioning, or squatting is functional, deadlifting is functional, and it's kind of a buzzy thing to say. And by and large it's true, like primal movements throughout the day, that's gonna be something you have to focus on. But from a hip, low back, knee, ankle standpoint, the function is gonna be through the gait cycle, right? As human beings, that's kind of what we're wired for, put one foot in front of the other. We can almost do it better than any animal on the planet. So if we're just assessing mobility and stability and strength demands of the hips or knee or ankle in a squat, it's a very narrow trajectory. It's full range of motion of a joint, or it's full range of motion of an exercise, not full range of motion of each joint.
Right.
So if we can blow that out now to like a really long trajectory, and we can take it out to the end ranges of the gait cycle, then we can start to project, because we're scaling down the stimulus of resistance, but we're scaling up the stimulus of range of motion and instability. So then we can see where our real weak links are, because we can hide it in that narrow range of motion of the squat, and then under enough resistance, you're gonna end up in the same spot, right? So as you put more weight on the bar, you're still just waiting to cross that threshold, right? And a lot of people, it's a hard thing to overcome, because it's a hard thing to conceptualize, because we're kind of ingrained, like, you know, what do you bench, right?
When we were talking earlier, I could kind of see the wheels in your head turning. You know, when you're thinking, oh, okay, I see, you know, something, this might maybe help him, whatever. I'm curious to know what's going on in your head, like what you would, if you were going to put something together, and I don't want to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, it's
just
good.
Off the top of your head, are there certain things you see in me based on, you know, what you saw and what I told you, that you would say, oh, okay, yes, this would absolutely help him?
You'd mentioned that unilateral loading using the V squat or the leg press had been potentially helpful, and you notice a difference in just loading that. And for you, it might even be beneficial as a stepping stone to get to body weight instability exercises, because that's going to be like benching 135 before you bench 185. You may not have the requisite stability built in to go right to 185, right? So the fact that you did that kind of intuitively could have actually been beneficial, because you made a lot of progress without addressing these underlying issues, which is great, because if you've been doing all this and still, you know, not really feel ready for a prep,
what else are you going to do?
Exactly, kind of reach the end of the road, right? But getting back to the Bulgarian split squat, the bodybuilder in you and in everyone really is going to load this movement with resistance. Right. But it's like, you know, you're good for a 600-pound squat for reps, right? So how much is this loading parameter of 1 foot forward, 1 foot back on a bench, how much resistance is that really going to put on the quads and hamstrings of like the affected leg? But now that we have an unstable loading parameter, let's lean into that. So instead of loading resistance, a dumbbell in each hand, let's
introduce more instability.
Exactly. So we can use weight to deviate our combined center of mass of us and the weight to then start shifting. So your intent is going to be, oh, geez, now this is resisting force.
Hold one dumbbell.
Hold one dumbbell. And for you especially, it's going to be whatever foot is forward is going to be the hand that you're going to place the dumbbell in. Right. A lot of people intuitively put it in the hand of the hip that's an extension. Right. So, but that's
more easily balanced.
Exactly, which is, again, it could be a stepping stone, but the end of the road would be here, because this is the most unbalanced. Yeah, especially with the crossbar, the muscles we're going to look to address and like correcting your hip and knee moving forward, mostly stabilizers of the hip, right? So glute med is going to be the primary one. Loading anything that's going to deviate our body's center of mass and require this to control its position is going to help keep this femur stable.
Right. Cool. I can't wait.
Yeah, no, it'll be a fun project. We'll see what we can do.
Well, I'm really glad that Jordan's here today, because honestly, I really think I'm going to be able to make some new and quick and efficient progress with your help.
Yeah.
So I'm very much looking forward to that. I hope you guys watching were able to learn something And that's it. Until next time, we'll see you guys.